Good morning and welcome to our final online parents forum before our first live event in 18 months, the Summer Fair at Hurlingham, which takes place under Stage 3 regulations at the Hurlingham Club next Tuesday. So today we're asking, would your teenager thrive better in a city or country school? And to answer that question, we've got teenage pupils from 5 city and country schools who will help you decide whether your child would suit a rural or urban location. We're delighted to be joined also by a hugely experienced panel this morning. Dr. Dominic Luckett is headmaster of Sherborne School. Dr. Mike Milner is head of senior school at Reddam House. Chris Cockrell is head of senior school at Fulham School. Lucy Eccleston is headmistress at Francis Holland Square. And Julia Hodgson is director of admissions at Marlborough College. There'll be an extended Q&A after the presentations where parents can directly question heads and pupils. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Schools will be answering questions as we go along, so don't wait till the Q&A section to start firing questions. But also use that, we'll as well as answering with typing answers, we'll be pulling questions from the Q&A box into the session to ask the schools directly. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Sherborne. Dr. Dominic Luckett is in Dorset with a pupil.
Guy, hello. Thank you so much for asking us to be part of this. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you fine.
I'm in a moment going to ask Will, who's one of our lower six, to say a few words about his experience at school. I like to think I'm reasonably well placed to talk about the difference between a country and a town education, because before coming to Sherborne, I was headmaster of a North London school for 8 years. I do have a decided preference, I have to say, for down here, and I hope we'll communicate some of that today. I know we've only got 5 minutes, so I shall be brief. For those who know nothing about Sherborne, it's a very old school, founded over 1,000 years ago, and it's set in this really beautiful, idyllic Dorset market town. And the school is sort of spread throughout the town, so the boys every day will pass through the town on many occasions, and they get to use local shops and the amenities, and it's just a really nice community feel. But at the same time, we have a train station right in the centre of town, pretty much next to one of our boarding houses, and that's a direct train line to London. And it takes just about 2¼ hours to get to London. So we are in Dorset, and it's beautiful and leafy and lovely, but we're not entirely cut off from London and the rest of the world. One of the other features of Sherborne is that we're a boys' school of about 600 boys, so we're a sort of medium-sized school, so a sense of intimacy prevails in the school. We're a boys' school, and we do believe that boys are educated best in the classroom without the distraction of girls, or without being able to distract girls. And that's reflected in the academic results we get, and particularly the value added that we get. But one of the things, and Will say a little bit more about this, we do not think it's a good idea for young men to grow up without having any meaningful contact with young women. So we have a very, very close and productive partnership with Sherborne Girls, which is an all-girls boarding school just next door to us, and we do a whole range of things. As I say, will elaborate on some of those in a moment. So we're quite distinctive in that regard. We're also, I have to say, a full boarding school. We've got 10% day pupils, but we're a school that is pretty much as busy at the weekends as it is during the week. And one of the things that gives us is just more time. The boys have more time, not just to pursue their academic work, although that obviously helps, and accounts in part for those results, but also to do a huge range of other things. And probably at that point, it's sensible for me to be quiet and to hand over to Will, who is brilliant, but only as brilliant as all the rest of our boys. And Will, I wonder if you could just say something about your experience in the school, the opportunities you've had, and the extent to which perhaps being in the countryside has enhanced what you've enjoyed and made it what it's been so far.
Yeah, so certainly I would emphasise the point of opportunities, and it's the wide variety of activities available to me as a Sherborne pupil that really enhances the experience, I feel. Because we're in this sort of intimate countryside boarding school, which isn't too large, but it gives a sense of a community. it gives me the experience to be able to have all these different activities to try with lots of different people from around school. So no matter your skill set or what you specialise in, there's definitely some sort of activity for you. For me, personally, drama, but I know for others it can be something as weird as walking or shooting or any other vague sport or activities you can think of. But I think, as well as the opportunities, it is important to emphasise the kindness around the community. As Dr. Luckett said, this is a medium-sized school, so boys interact pretty closely. But that's in a fairly open community in a town, which gives you a sense of independence. Boys are allowed to be liberal with their choices and have a huge range of experiences in the town to choose, but also around the school campus. And this means that they mix with each other and get to know each other better.
And I think, well, as we said, just having that time, boys do really well academically here, but music is incredibly strong. Sport is a huge part. So because you don't have a commute, because you're not going home at the end of the day, there's just more time to do those things. A lot of them, though, are done with Sherborne Girls. Could you just say a few words about your experience of the partnership with Sherborne Girls and what it's actually meant to you in terms of your day-to-day existence in the school?
Yeah, so as it was said, we don't necessarily have a full mix with the girls in terms of lessons, but that by no means means that we don't mix with the girls, in that there are lots of opportunities outside of lessons to meet with girls, such as in town and your free time. And that's another benefit of being in the country, is that because it's such an open community in a small country town, is that boys and girls can meet easily without any danger whatsoever. But also there are these school-arranged activities such as sailing, CCF, musical productions and drama productions that allow boys and girls to easily meet with each other, and that's all arranged by the school. But also another point would be that there are a lot of siblings from the girls' school and the boys' school that meet with each other.
And I think the two things about the relationship between the two schools is, first of all, it's friendships. Boys and girls having healthy, natural, normal friendships, which is a really good and important thing, but also they work productively together. So I'm aware Guy is popped up on the screen, which I think is Guy's way of telling us to be quiet. But Guy, I hope that gives some sense of what Sherborne is about.
That's brilliant. Thank you both very much, Dominic and Will. And we'll come back to you, I'm sure, with lots of questions in a minute. So now we're moving from sunny Dorset, where it looks like you've got beautiful weather, to Sloane Square, to Francis Holland School, where Lucy Ethelston, headmistress, will be introducing the school and talking to some pupils. Lucy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Guy. Welcome to sunny London. I'm Lucy Elphinston, not Ethelston, Guy, as Elphinston, headmistress of Francis Holland School, Sloane Square. And we are in a beautiful leafy part of Belgravia, quiet and safe, but just 2 minutes from Sloane Square, from Saatchi Gallery, and a few minutes walk from all the wonderful opportunities of South Kensington, the V&A, the museums there, and a host of other cultural opportunities. So I'm standing here in the old schoolhouse, a beautiful building which we just acquired, 900 square meters on 3 stories, which gives us the opportunity to provide for our sixth form this fantastic hub where they can develop our vision of creativity, innovation, and enterprise. We are linked very closely to the community, both in service and in terms of preparing our girls for the real world beyond school and possibly university. And so we are perfectly placed here to develop strong, single-minded, independent young women who can go out and be the change makers in society. So you will see that this beautiful building, I think, is probably one of the most sophisticated and exciting places for any sixth form students to study. And because of our situation so close, right in central London, so close to so many amenities and cultural opportunities, our girls are able to take advantage of those all the time. And if you come with me over here, I have got sitting here Rosie. Rosie, you are a girl who's certainly taken advantage of all the creative and artistic opportunities here. I know that you set up your own jewellery business. I know that you've been closely involved with mentors who come into our school. And I think you have really enjoyed being part of this vibrant community here in London. How has being in central London in a school here helped you and influenced you as you've gone through your career?
I think that accessibility to all of the things we have in London creates opportunities for us. Like you mentioned with my jewellery, I had the opportunity to sell at this local shed festival. It was called last September, which kind of spurred on my kind of business idea. And then with the help from mentors through multiple schemes throughout the school, I could kind of be coached and I carried this forward, and now I kind of have this business. So yeah.
And I think you've been instrumental in helping the younger girls, because I know enterprise isn't something we tack on in our sixth form for a day in the end of the summer term. In every year group, the girls are learning about social enterprise, and many of, I think 18 in year 7 alone, have set up their own businesses, and they learn to give a tenth of their profits back to our charity partners. How did you help in the enterprise fair, and what did that consist of just recently?
So we have tips week at the end of each year, which is for year 7 and 8, and that stands for thinking innovatively and problem solving. So we kind of had lots of activities. So there was jewelry making, there's filmmaking, and it just encourages the young girls in the years to be really creative and think on their feet, which is really appropriate for the real world and the world of work.
Well, we wish you well as you go off to study business at University, Rosie. We're going to go over now to two more of our sixth formers, Amy and Cara, two very different girls with different passions and interests. And Amy, I'm going to turn to you first. I know that you are really dedicated and passionate about ideas to do with the environment, to do with politics and economics. Can you tell me what it has meant for you being here in central London and what opportunities you found in your own studies?
Absolutely. So in London, everything's at your doorstep. The recent Van Gogh exhibit is 20 minutes away at Battersea Park, and the Alice in Wonderland is just 5 minutes away on the Victoria and Albert Museum. Everything here is very accessible. We were able to take advantage of many opportunities. For example, a debate training course at UCL when I was just 13. I learned many skills that I still use today and probably take with me to university. And so I could not be more grateful about going to school in London.
Has it affected you personally? Some people may be worried. We're a day school, you're travelling in and out from your home into school. How has that affected you?
I feel I've grown to be very independent. I know my way around the tube station very well. I feel like I'm a real grown-up. Learning to navigate myself in a busy world, real world, has been very helpful to my upbringing. I feel like not only academically smart, but also street smart now, because I can know my way around London without panicking.
And having so many other schools right on our doorstep too, what opportunities, particularly, for example, in debating, have you been able to take advantage of?
Well, we had last year some London debate school competitions where we took part in a debate competition for the evening with many other schools, up to about 12. We came from all across London. Some actually came from Spain, and we got to debate against them. It was a great opportunity. Luckily, we won. We were able to bring them the cup. And without being in London, we would not have been able to do that.
Thank you, Amy. And if I turn to Cara now, Cara, you're soon to be off to the National Youth Theatre, which is a tremendously prestigious thing to have won, and you're a drama scholar and passionate, I know. In fact, you've performed on the West End stage as the star of one of our musicals, which we perform each year in a big Shaftesbury theatre. What has being here in London meant to you in the development of your passions?
Well, I think being situated in London has been incredibly enriching for the creative arts department here at school. As you said, I've been an active actor in the school throughout all of my time here, and it's just been supported by all of the opportunities we have, supporting the curriculum learning. We have frequent trips to live theatre productions, which of course has been hindered by COVID. But before the lockdown, we were able to visit numerous live theatre productions, such as the National Theatre's Rep Company at the Soho Theatre, or the upcoming theatre trip to Amelie in the West End. I mean, the Royal Court Theatre is just on our doorstep, as well as the Samuel French Bookshop, which is part of the Royal Court for young actors looking for new material. They release lots of new plays there from fantastic playwrights. And as you mentioned, we have the incredible opportunity to stage some of our own productions on the West End stage. We've staged 2 musicals now, Singing in the Rain and The Snow Queen, at the Shaftesbury Theatre in the West End, which has just been the most incredible opportunity for young actors, which we're so grateful for.
And I think, Cara, I know that at the centre of our school is a desire to serve the local community, and being in this wonderful city means that there are so many opportunities which you might not have in the country. Cara, can you tell us anything just briefly about our local charity partners and the ways in which girls here all serve in the community?
Yes, well, we're very actively involved in a number of charities such as Indeed or the Catholic Settlement, which we do a lot of work with. I know Amy's done some work with the children there, and I myself have worked with the elderly community there, actually kind of liaising with the drama department in that for our devised verbatim piece for A-level, we spoke to the elderly community there, and we had some interviews about memory and the past, which was doubled as an experience to serve as some verbatim material for our piece, but also to interact with and kind of serve as companions to some of the elderly community there, which was incredibly enriching and a great experience.
Thank you, Cara. And I know that we are, being in the centre of London, we are all very politically engaged. And I know, because I know you girls, all the sixth form so well, that you are all right in with the latest issues that affect us all. So that's another great advantage of being here. Thank you, girls, for talking to us. And back to you, Guy.
Thank you, Lucy. That was absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure there will be loads and loads of questions that people will want to ask about life in central London. Meantime, now we're going to turn to Marlborough College in Wiltshire, where Julia Hodgson, Director of Admissions, has got two pupils, Isabel and Atticus.
Hello there. Yes, so we're coming to you from beautifully sunny Marlborough today. We are set in 293 acres of wonderful rolling Wiltshire downland. We are incredibly lucky with our site. It's immensely historic. At the centre of our college, we have a Neolithic mound that is nearly 4,000 years old. So it would be hard to find a school perhaps with a greater history. In addition to that, some of our pupils are busy excavating the footstones of King John's Castle. We actually have an archaeological dig currently taking place on our site. But we're so much more than that. We're a full boarding school of over 1,000 pupils. Every pupil here is a full boarder. So community is immensely important to us. And it is that sense of community that I think does set Marlborough apart. Our pupils here make friends for life in their boarding houses. If we're honest, they'll learn to live too with people that perhaps they wouldn't choose to, but that's part of boarding too, and that's part of how we set pupils up for life when they leave us. Of course, with such a large site and amazing facilities, the opportunities here are exceptional, and they really are for everybody. Some of our pupils will choose to make their homes in the library. They'll head up our academic societies. They'll make our Oxbridge and our Ivy League applications. Others will choose to make their homes on the football pitches or on the rugby pitch or in some other sports, others in drama, others in the art school, others in music. I always say there really is no right way to do Marlborough. The right way for you is the way that is right for you. And there are all sorts of people who thrive here, and we can do that because we're full boarding, because the opportunities here are 24/7, because the pupils are here with us at the weekends, and because we have the space to offer the facilities for them to be involved in such a broad range of activities. So I've got with me today Isabel and Atticus, who are two of our sixth form pupils, and they're going to talk to us. I'm going to talk with them a little bit about life at a country boarding school. So Izzy, can you tell me a little bit, you were at school in London before you came to join us here at Marlborough. Can you tell me a little bit about what that transition was like?
Yeah, so the transition was really manageable and actually very enjoyable for me. I moved out to a country school only a few years before Marlborough, but I've honestly loved every minute of it. I think having grown up in London, it's been so wonderful to have the chance to spend so much time in the countryside. And I think for pupils like me who are splitting their time between the city and the country, we have the perfect balance of time spent down here in beautiful Wiltshire, but also back home in the city. And I mean, there's always pros and cons to a transition like this, but from my perspective, practically, I spend a lot less time traveling, but also there are a number of wonderful activities here at Marlborough that are only made possible because of the amazing space that we have. And from my perspective, it's really nice to have a bit of a separate space from school and from home. And so that it means that when I get to go home in the holidays, I can really enjoy just being in London and being with my family.
And Atticus, how important we're obviously very blessed with our facilities here on such a big site. How important are these first-class facilities?
Yeah, obviously first-class facilities are fantastic, and we are really lucky to have good facilities at Marlborough, such as the gym, and we've just completed the new innovation centre, which we're really grateful for. But I don't think that they're essential. As what is more important are the people that you put in there and the relationships built around them between pupils and teachers also. So yes, they're brilliant, but what really matters are the friendships that you build for life within those facilities and within those establishments.
Izzy, can you tell me whether you think we make good use of the countryside that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think we make excellent use of the countryside here in Marlborough. As I mentioned before, there are so many activities on offer to ensure that we really do make the most of it. From mountain biking to fly fishing to CCF to Duke of Edinburgh training, to whole school walks that we do for charity across the Wiltshire Downs. And particularly excitingly at the moment is the restoration of the White Horse, which is somewhat of a local landmark here in Marlborough. And a team of student volunteers each week go and help the ground staff to restore it, which is, from what I've heard, it's been really enjoyable. But also it's really nice to just play a role in kind of restoring the local landscape. And I think as students here, we really enjoy having access to the incredible setting that we do, but also we feel enormously grateful for the extent of the activities that the school provide for us to really ensure that we can make the most of it.
Thank you, Izzy. That's because obviously being at a full boarding school when you're 17 might sound to some people as if it's really quite restrictive, as you know, it's in school 24/7. Do you think that you have enough freedom here as a full boarding student?
Yes, absolutely. We're quite fortunate at Marlborough as we're free to go into the Marlborough High Street, which I think is really lucky. And I think the freedom of going into town is a very good and important quality of Marlborough. We also have a significant amount of time on the weekends to do whatever we want. There are several activities that are arranged for different houses throughout the year on Sundays, more so in the lower school, but we are always left with free time to relax and socialise on weekends anyway. I personally went into town in the lower school to have lunch with my parents or friends quite frequently, as they live fairly local, which is also quite a nice aspect.
Thank you. And both of you, could you perhaps talk to me a little bit about how you think being away at boarding school has had an impact on the relationship with your parents? In some ways, full boarding is becoming slightly countercultural these days. I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you feel that's shaped the relationship that you have with your parents.
Yeah, my parents live quite close, so I think that it has quite a good impact. And as I've always boarded, if I ever need them or if they wanted to see me, I can always ask them to come and have lunch or coffee in the high street, which, as I said previously, I did quite frequently in the lower school. When I go home, I have a really close relationship with my family, and my brother goes to Marlborough as well. And though I don't see him extremely often at school, as he's in a different house to me, seeing him now and then also allows me to maintain our close relationship, and we're able to support each other if we ever need to.
Yeah, I mean, slightly differently to Atty, obviously I'm a bit further away from my mum and my brother, but actually I feel that it's really sort of enabled me to have an even closer relationship with my family. I've been boarding 7 years, and of course there are times that it's hard not having your parents there as a kind of immediate safety net, but actually it's made me incredibly independent and very self-sufficient. But my mum's only ever a phone call away, and it does mean that when I get to go home, I really value the time that I get to spend with my family. And it does slightly prevent me from getting too irritated by my 10-year-old brother, who tends to pester me a bit when I'm at home. So yeah, it's been actually, I think, a bit of a blessing in disguise.
Thank you both. I hope that gives you a little bit of flavour of countryside boarding, and that it may be of interest to you. And we'd be happy to answer any questions when we get to the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marlborough, and thank you, Izzy and Atty. That was really interesting, and I'm sure that there'll be lots and lots of questions jumping out from that. But we'll move on now to Fulham, back to West London, where Chris Cockrell is standing by with some pupils. Chris, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Guy. And I have Theo here with me this morning as well. I think he's just turning his camera on at the same time. But good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Cockrell, and I am the head of Fulham Senior School. Fulham School is an independent coeducational day school located right here in the heart of Fulham, built on the strong reputation of our prep and our pre-prep schools. The senior school is 4 years old, and we're delighted to be opening our sixth form this September, where we are very much looking forward to offering the International Baccalaureate. We are part of a wider group of schools, Inspired Education, and we have great opportunities to share best practice and collaborate with 76 other schools worldwide. We're a mid-sized school with a maximum year group size of 44. In downtown Fulham, there is a real plethora of opportunities for students to get involved in, ranging from the extracurricular to curricular activities and even local trips into the city centre. We are wonderfully cosmopolitan as a community, and we welcome students from a broad range of different backgrounds who all have a real interest in learning and making the most of the opportunities that are available to them. Success to us as a school means confident and driven students when they leave us who feel very prepared for the wider world at large. Great, so with me here to this morning is Theo, who's been with Fulham for a good number of years and has experience of being in both country and some inner city schools as well. Theo, you used to go to school in the country before coming to Fulham. Could you talk me through what do you most enjoy about going to school in London?
So yeah, I was in a country school it was at a school called Ardingly, and I was there for about half a year or so. And there were massive advantages that came with being at a boarding school. But I always just felt that I'd grown up in London and I was more adapted and I was better coping with being in London than in the country. So moving back to London was a big step coming back, but it helped with, I feel there's much more independence of being in London in the sense of you're traveling to and from school on public transport or however else. But there's also the sense of at Fulham, we're allowed to go out at break times and lunch times and after school all by ourselves. And there are massive groups that build in that, as most schools all finish at the same time. And they're quite close in London. So we can all meet up and makes it really beneficial for everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Theo. And could you tell me to you, what do you think that makes Fulham special and the right environment for you?
So when I left my previous school, I was really looking for a small starting school because I wanted the feeling of, especially being at a small school, I feel there's much more connection between and a much stronger relationships between the teachers and pupils, which is key to keeping pupils interested and excited for classes. And being at a school that's just started, or 4 years now, which doesn't seem like that long ago it started, but it helps with the sense of being able to build up the school and feeling like your input into the school is shaping how the school's going to be. So,
and something you touched on there, I think is really important to us all. We really pride ourselves a lot at Fulham for our caring and nurturing community. Could you tell me a little bit about the staff at the school and how you feel they've supported you?
Yeah, so the teachers at Fulham, they will go far beyond what is needed. Like science department is amazing. They will take time out of after school as long as you need for extra work, and if you ask them for extra work to be set, they'll allow it. And that goes across all teachers throughout the school. And especially something that's great at Fulham is their pastoral care and being able to help with not just academic problems at school, but with a lot of other problems that could be going on in pupils' lives.
And you also spoke a little bit there also earlier about kind of going in and out, either during the day, before school, after school. In London, sometimes you can be on your own. How do you feel in terms of your safety and in terms of your independence about making your own way to school and going in and around the local high street?
Yes, I think it's very difficult because on the news we always see these things of assaults and that kind of thing on kids going to and from schools in London. I think it's very difficult because we always see it's those that get shown, but it's such a small amount that happens. And with the routes that, obviously you have to be careful on which routes you take to schools in London, but with a little bit of knowledge about where to go and what areas to avoid, there really is no problem with traveling in London.
Absolutely. And Theo, I think another thing that I just wanted to capture is the sense of vibrancy that you can feel in London. There's so much to do. Could you talk us through a little bit of kind of maybe the clubs, the extracurricular activities, and what all the extras on top of the curriculum that you get involved with here at Fulham?
Yeah, so at Fulham, there are massive amounts of, although we're a new school starting up, there are a lot of extracurricular things. There are massive amounts of sports clubs that run after schools. Like I'm going to own up to, but I started playing netball at the beginning of this year because I had a couple of friends that were going to start it, and I thought I've never played it before and I would like to go on and try it. And at first it was quite difficult because being in London, there is a smaller amount of space and sports grounds, but we managed to find an area and then going there on a weekly basis and doing that and actually mixing with kids from the younger year groups. It just forces the school all together, which leads to more extracurriculum stuff being made because it's a new school. The pupils they start the clubs and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for your time here, Theo. And back over to you, Guy.
Thank you both, Chris and Theo. And now we're turning to Reddam House School in Berkshire, and Dr. Mike Milner, who's head of senior school there, will introduce some pupils.
Thank you very much, Guy. So good morning, everyone. Reddam House is this beautiful school behind me, and you can see on the picture. It's co-educational day and boarding school. It's near Reading in Berkshire. The school itself is based in a Victorian mansion, a very beautiful property, set in 125 acres of woodland. And although we are fairly rural, with lots of grounds, we are fortunate that we're quite close to Heathrow Airport. And from Reading, which is our local town, there's a fast train to London, which only takes 30 minutes. So we are country in one sense, but we're still well connected to other parts of the country. I've got two students with me today who are going to answer a few questions. Got Harriet and Leo. So thank you very much for their time this morning. Leo, I'm going to start by asking you a question about residential setting and being in boarding at the age of 16 and 17. So what's it been like for you?
I think, quoting from my boarding house parents, the boarding house is like a home away from home. The boarding staff are basically like my parents. They make sure that I'm well looked after, just like their own children. And at the same time, it also gives me the experience of being independent and living by myself. And also what's different for being a boarder in a boarding house is that we're able to have teachers that teach us during the day, come in and then help us with prep at night, which is a great advantage for us. And then also living on site, there is no commute to school, which is quite nice in the mornings.
Thank you very much. And then just carrying on from that, as being a resident in the school, how much freedom do you get? Do you get more or less freedom than being at home?
I think we have around the same freedom that we would have at home. So some might see that being in school all the time, the boundary between the boarding house / home and school, the boundaries becomes blurred. But I think this is not the case. So while there is the schedule of having certain prep times and dinner times, we still get around 3 to 4 hours every night that we have our own free time to use the facilities inside.
That's great. And Harriet, what about independence generally as you're in the sixth form, maybe year 11, 12, 13?
I think for me, as a sixth former, the main difference I got moving into sixth form was independent study and my free time during the day. And obviously when you start year 12, teachers kind of have to help you along, tell you how much you should be working, kind of what you should do. But by the middle of year 12, you get the ability to make your own decisions about what work you want to do, how you want to study for your lessons, and during that free time, if you want to spend it going outside and relaxing or working on your A-levels, and that depends on what you need as a person.
That's great. And as you get older, you get more responsibility, I guess, within school. So how have you experienced that, Harriet? What sort of responsibility have you had?
The main responsibility I got, and yeah, is being a role model for the school. Younger kids look up to you as you've been through their footsteps. You know what it's like in their years, so you can help them with things you've experienced, and you can kind of show them how you should, I guess, grow up in a sense, and how you should act as you get older. And then you also have the choice to become more responsible. I've chosen to be in a committee before and make more decisions about how the school should run and things that should change for the student experience.
Great, thanks very much. And we have this beautiful setting that you've been lucky to attend. What uses have you made of the setting and the facilities we've had?
Main thing for me was DOV, which is something you start in year 9, you go on expeditions and walking and stuff like that. And because of our local area, it meant that we didn't have to stray too far from home when you're slightly younger to do these things and get these experiences. And then as you get older, there's cadets where you can do all of these exercises and get to all these cool military badges from all of these things we can do on site. And then there's also like the convenience of biology field work where you don't have to go and visit somewhere. You can just use the fields you already have and the plants you already have to study for your A-level.
That's great. And Leo, what about you and using our location? We've got the country aspect, but we're also near towns as well. How's your experience been?
My experience has been great. I think since we're in such close proximity to, say, London, for example, we're able to take both recreational and educational trips, such as going to the Science and Natural History Museum in London, or even just go to a theme park such as Thorpe Park nearby. And also on the school grounds itself, we're able to take advantage of our both forest and our lake. So we're able to do activities such as paintballing, mountain biking. So it's a great advantage to the countryside.
That's great. And Harriet, what about you?
I think the main thing is we're not as isolated as you might think a country school might be, obviously because we have those connections to like bigger towns like Reading and London, but also because as a school we're connected globally. That means that we can do projects with schools all over the country and we can even visit them as well.
Very quick, because I know our last question is just how does being in our school affect your life, and especially through its location?
I think it's a positive onto my mental health being. I think I'm able to use the spare time to utilise, say, the forest and the green space around me to whether it's playing sports with my friends, but day and boarding, or just take walks out for myself. And there's also other facilities such as the theatre, the swimming pool I'm able to take advantage of.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, both of you. Thank you, Guy.
That's fascinating, and I'm going to come back to you very shortly. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to run round, and I'm going to ask pupils some specific questions, and we'll jump from one school to another to see if we can get some comparisons and really see how life in these schools differs for different depending on being a day pupil versus being a boarding pupil. So I'm going to start by asking Will at Sherborne. Will, what time did you wake up this morning?
Well, we've just finished a week of exams, so I've been getting up a little earlier to revise, but I try and get up at about 10 to 7 every morning because, well, they're very entitled to breakfast, but it also allows time to get ready for school and just have a chat in the morning if you have some free time with the rest of the people in your house. So I'd say that's a general trend with the people in the house. They like to get up quite early and get to breakfast.
What time is breakfast?
Breakfast, well, during to COVID, we've had to restructure the breakfast system, so it's all done in bubbles. But our breakfast time is 7:30, so that allows us to have a shower and get ready.
Okay. And what do you have for breakfast?
Well, there's quite a variety of food, and on some days it's very difficult to decide. But
What did you have today?
Today I had croissants, which is what I usually have, but there's also sort of the full English fried breakfast, but also sort of fruit available and yogurt and things like that. So plenty available depending on what your preference is.
Okay, brilliant. So it sounds like you've got a real kind of like 5-star hotel existence over down there in Sherborne. Let's find out what Rosie at Francis Holland, what time do you get up? What did you have for breakfast?
I also get up at 7, well, not 10 to 7, 7, and I have breakfast around 7:20, and then I'll probably leave my house to get to school at 7:40, because it takes me about 20 minutes, and that means I'm in school at kind of 10 past 8, 5 past 8, 10 past 8, and registration's at 8:20, so I'm like there in plenty of time.
And was it croissants in your house for breakfast?
Sometimes it is actually, but usually like cereal or toast or something.
Great, thank you very much. So let's jump. Actually, just to follow that up, how do you get to school?
Oh, I get the tube, or sometimes my mum will drive me, but I usually get the tube with my friends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Let's jump to Izzy. In Marlborough, what's your morning like? What time do you wake up?
Yeah, well, I feel very lucky now. I wake up at about 7:45, and normally, because I'm in a slightly out of campus boarding house, I get to eat in house. So I get to go downstairs in my pajamas, and the boarding house provides cereal and pastries and toast, and yeah, so quite relaxed in the mornings. Yeah,
I mean, there's that would be the general perception of boarding, that it's slightly more relaxed start than for day pupils. Mm-hmm. Who've got to do this commute. So I'm going to jump now to Theo at Fulham and ask about the opposite end of the day. Theo, what did you do after school yesterday?
So I'm very lucky. I didn't have school yesterday.
Okay, let's go back a day then. The day before.
Well, we had to go back a bit further than that, but I've just finished exam, so we haven't had school for a couple of days. But regular after school day, I will often do a club after school, whether that's stay at school for a bit and do some work after school, or go and play some sport. But I often cycle to and from school. And often I have a good friend that lives very near me, and we will walk home from Fulham, which is quite a long walk. It's about an hour and 20 minutes on that walk back from school. But it's a great time to wind down after a day at school.
So what sort of time do you usually get home?
So our school day finishes around 4:15. And clubs will often run till about 5:30, something like that. So if I'm cycling, I'll be home by 6. And if I'm walking, another half an hour onto that. So about 6:30, 6:45.
And what a typical evening then is what?
So I'll get home. If I haven't done prep or work, I'll go upstairs to my room and do some prep. And then have supper, chill out for a bit, watch some films with my parents or something like that, and be in bed by about 10:30, 11, which is...
That's a brilliantly interesting topic. We'll now jump to Atticus at Marlborough, and let's see how that compares.
Yeah, so our typical school day changes on what time it ends, but on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, it will usually end at about 3:15 or 4:15 now because of summer timetable, and then we'll usually have sport after that. So for example, yesterday my school day ended at 4:25, and then I had football practice from about 4:45 until I went back for supper, and then prep at 7:30. And that it sort of usually follows a similar pattern to that. And but it will change on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where you'll only have 4 lessons maximum, and the school day will actually end at lunch, and then you'll have sport in the afternoons, followed by a studies session from 5:30 to 6:30, where usually I would do work because I have exams next week, so I'm revising in those sessions. But depending on your commitments, then it changes from time to time.
Okay, so just to put some rough numbers on this, how much prep do you do a night normally, on average?
On average, in the sixth form, well, it's an hour and a half. Prep's usually an hour and a half, and this past week I have been completely using up all that time for work and usually going over it for revision. Any time that I have free in prep will be filled by revision for my exams next week. And usually,
what time do you go to bed?
Lights out for us in Littlefield is 10:30 in Lower.
Okay, so a little bit earlier than the day student, I'm guessing. Okay, let's jump to let's go to Harriet at Reddam House and ask her the same questions. So, Harriet, what time do you go to bed, and how much time in the evening do you spend doing prep?
Well, because we're sixth formers now, we have a little bit more independence about when we go to bed. I think lights out is 10:30. Yeah, it's 10:30, but because we're older, we have a little bit of more leeway than some of the younger kids. And then in terms of how much prep we do after school, I do most of my work during my day where I have study periods, but we still have an hour. An hour and a half, depending on like how much work you do after school, where teachers will come in and they'll help you do your homework and they'll help you study and do stuff like that every day, every weekend.
Great, thanks. I'm going to ask now the same question to Amy at Francis Holland, just to get the sense of how much, because I think it's very interesting whether people do more prep, for example, in boarding schools or day schools. I've always got a theory that people do slightly more in day schools, but maybe I'm wrong. Amy, are you there, Francis Holland?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, so on a normal day, I'll probably do about 2 to 3 hours of prep work. If we're including everything, including my extracurricular activities, I'll do some history work and I'll maybe do some further maths practice. And then I'll work on my extracurriculars. I'll work on coding some more for an app that I've been recently developing. And I'll set aside some time to practice for an instrument. And I'll include that as soon as I get home from 6 to 9. And I think I'd be asleep at 11, whether I like it or not. I think my body will be down by then. But it changes depending on the day, of course. We've had exam season recently, so we've had to pull back on the extracurriculars and maybe increase on the revision front. But
are you surprised Amy, when you hear boarders say that they do like an hour and a half of prep? Does that surprise you? Because I think boarders do it in a very different way from day pupils.
I would imagine that day pupils would be more independent in their working style, because I can imagine your teachers are on call in the school no matter what. And I don't like to email my teachers at 11:30, so I'll just stick to my guns and do it myself. But I think it's nice to have your own set of time apart. If you do an hour and a half and that works for you, great. I personally like to take more time for myself.
Okay, so we're now going to jump into we've been on very safe, easy questions now. We're going to jump into some slightly more tricky ones. So the first one I'm going to ask, and I'll throw this, I think, let's start with, let's go back to Sherborne and ask Will. We've been talking about the relationship between parents and pupils and what boarding does to that. So I'm kind of interested, Will, what do you think boarding has done to your relationship with your parents? I mean, is it strengthening it, or is it entirely? Is it weakening some aspects? How involved are your parents, for example, in how you're doing at school? How have they had to let go about knowing what you're up to?
Yeah, well, I think there's sometimes the assumption that boarding school means you don't see your parents at all, but I certainly don't think that's true. And there's plenty of opportunities in weekends to see your parents. And being at school in the country doesn't mean you're sort of in this bubble on your own. As Dr. Lockett said, we have that link to London, which is a direct link. So it is very easy for parents to come down and visit, whether it be for a meal, whether it's coming to watch a match, or coming to watch a music concert or something like that. I think for me personally, there's been no weakening whatsoever of my relationship with my parents, because they come to any extracurricular commitment I have and I see them fairly regularly. At the same time, I think it's nice to have some time away from your parents. It gives more of a sense of independence, and not so much relying on them to support the whole of the time, but making your own decisions to some extent.
Do they know? I mean, like, for example, if you're not up to date with if you're not doing preps very well, would they know that, or is that something that's entirely within school?
I think there's a limit. So obviously, as a pupil, you want to be managing your own problems. So if you are behind in ball, that's probably something for you to deal with. If you feel like you can't deal with it yourself, there are plenty of services. Talking to a teacher, talking to your tutor, is also a very helpful way to deal with it. When it comes to a certain point where it is a problem that's spiraling, I think definitely a parent would get involved. But I think the school's very much encouraging initiative from the boys themselves to take up these problems rather than trying to turn to other people for help.
Great, that's very helpful. Theo at Fulham, how involved are your parents in things like whether you've done your homework?
So I think personally for me, I try and keep my parents not involved as much. They wish that they were involved more. But even from the sense of them just being there and knowing that being at a day school, they are informed a lot about how school's going. They don't need to be doing much for there to be an impact on thinking about prep to be done and work to be done at home. And not having that kind of relationship where it's constantly asking about prep and homework with parents is very important, because personally from experience, I used to be very bad at doing that kind of thing. And since kind of moving that away from my parents, have been able to build a much stronger relationship with them, from not just talking about school and that kind of thing, but a lot of other more interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, and that's interesting. I mean, in some ways, boarding forces that, but all students need to do that. Day students or boarders. I'm going to jump. You spoke very powerfully about walking home every day with a friend, and I kind of wanted to ask some of the boarders where their friends live, and whether they get to see friends away from school. So maybe we can jump to Leo, maybe at Reddam House, first of all.
Most of our day pupils live in our vicinity, so there may be maximum around 20-30 minutes drive away. And on the weekend, most of us would go out and meet our friends in the vicinity.
Okay, so generally boarders live quite close to the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Is that true? Is that true at Marlborough? Let's ask Harriet, maybe. No, Harriet. Sorry, Izzy.
No, so it's slightly different, I think. There are definitely pupils who live near the campus, but there are also lots of us who are a bit more spread out. There are lots of overseas pupils, but also spread across the country. So there's quite a lot in London, but then, yeah, again, lots spread out. But it's definitely, I think, with a full boarding school as Marlborough, you see a lot of each other. And so when you're at home, it's quite nice to be able to meet up with people, of course, but also you have the chance to get a bit of space when you're literally living with these people all the time. Yeah.
Right, and I suspect let's jump to Francis Holland and Cara, who we haven't heard from for a bit. What's your social life like? Where do your friends live?
Yeah, my friends are pretty much situated all around London, and being at a school in London, we have girls that are pretty much there, but some do commute from areas kind of further outside. They're kind of dotted all around though. And yeah, I mean, being in London, we have access to like a number of great things that enrich the social life. And so being, let out of school at 4 o'clock earlier, if you have study afternoons in the sixth form, means you can really make the most of your free time, go out to cinemas, restaurants, wherever you want with your friends, which is really nice to have that time to socialise outside of school, which in the sixth form is pretty full on.
It sounds like you have quite a sort of grown-up type social life in a way.
Yes, I mean, I think that depends on your like friends and the people that you're friends with and how you guys choose to spend time. But yeah, I do like to kind of spend my free time visiting like museums and stuff with my friends. I think it just helps to enrich the curriculum, and especially now in the build up to university, it's really helpful to have that stuff you can keep kind of adding to your CV and stuff like that to help just further enrich your life outside of just the school building.
I'm going to stay in France, Holland, jump back to Rosie now. Obviously, we've all heard about everyone's invited. How well do you think your school's handling those issues? And do you think being at a day school or boarding school makes the issue of gender relations more or less difficult? That's a really massive question.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer all of it.
Well, obviously, being an all-girls school, we may feel the impact a bit more, because we can relay our experiences from one another and kind of share like our personal experiences. But the pastoral care here is fantastic. So, heads of sixth form door is always open. Younger down the years, you have head of sections where you can go and kind of like tell your issues or kind of what's happened to you if you feel like you can't speak to your parents so much. But also, I guess that's another benefit of being in a day school is you can go home and speak to your parents about kind of things that you're worried about, especially too with the everyone's invited issue, So I think that's a really great thing. And just like we're such a family here, you just can really go to any teacher. Yeah, it's a really safe environment.
Let's jump to back to Will Sherborne. Obviously, you've got a boys' school and a girls' school. Has everyone's invited been a big issue down in Sherborne?
Yeah, it's been a very poignant issue, especially for our generation. And I think that's where our partnership with Sherborne Girls has really benefited us, because it has led to increased conversation about the issue, which is important for people of our age to educate ourselves on a subject that will be incredibly impactful for years to come. As a school, we have arranged things, staff arrange things, obviously, in the curriculum and trying to arrange classes. But I think also pupils have tried to take the initiative, and they've done their own things. They've written letters. We have a radio service throughout the school, and I personally have done shows with other people discussing the issue, because we feel it's really important to talk about an issue like this. And we think it'd be best when peer-led. And in an environment like this, the girls' school and the boys' school have discussed the idea and come up with our own solutions to try and address it.
That's fascinating. I'm going to jump to Marlborough quickly, and maybe Izzy and Atty can speak together. How is it playing out there?
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's a massive issue, and I think we really benefit from having obviously girls at Marlborough as well, and it's really encouraged boys especially to educate themselves about the topic, and I think that's important. I think if we didn't have that dynamic, we'd be less inclined to educate ourselves, which I think is really bad. So I think it's really good that we have that dynamic, and obviously there are services that are going to be in place, and I think similar to Sherborne, a lot of pupils have want to talk about it more, and me personally, I've seen sort of staff addressing the subject and making sure that we are openly talking about it and kind of removing the stigma behind it and able to talk about it so that it becomes an issue that we as a school deal with really easily. I don't know how Izzy feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think Atty really caught it perfectly. I think sometimes there's the perception that as a boarding school in the country, we can be a bit isolated from some of the wider cultural issues, but I would challenge that. I think with the age of social media, our generation, regardless of where your school is situated, is more engaged than ever. And at Marlborough, there was a huge pupil kind of engagement in this issue. And like to Sherborne, again, much of it was sort of pupil-led. And I think the school were amazing at inviting conversation between the pupil and the staff body to ensure that we felt like we were being heard, but that we also felt that we kind of had a role to play in this, and that ultimately if we had a vision for how we wanted to deal with it, that would be kind of materialized. And so I think it's been a challenge, but one that has actually been really positive in light of all of it in the end. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're running out of time, and we're going to have to come to a stop. I think we could have gone on all day. This is the final talk in our build-up program. Next week, the Independent School Show is taking place at with the summer fair at the Hurlingham Club on Tuesday, the 22nd of June. It's running all day, and it's bringing together all today's schools, plus other leading independent schools from London and across the country. So if you'd like to come along and have further conversations with these schools and find out how they tick and whether they would suit your child, book tickets on schoolshow.co.uk.